the ride. I don't know if I missed some of that earlier, but there's no way we're going to get across California on motorcycles to get to the ride. It's just ain't going to happen.
Mhm.
We are probably a few hours from being told that we are truly under house arrest, so to speak. So, you know, they've done that in many counties already in California. So, Linda, how's where you are in Washington? Linda, how is it where you are in Washington?
We're all locked down too. Well, yeah. Restaurants are closed, just like every place else. Restaurants are closed. Schools are closed. I don't know what Seattle's like. Anacortes wasn't bad this afternoon, other than the drive-through at McDonald's was hellaciously long.
Sadly, I had to cancel the I mission. There's a chance we're going to reschedule it for August, but I had to cancel it in May. Delta's now extending everything out in Central America to the end of May.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy, but it's, well, Guatemala has shut every single airline coming in from it from anywhere outside of its country. El Salvador's done the same thing. There's about 3 or 4 countries now that have done every airline. They're only accepting cargo planes, nothing else.
And my regular Rotary Club shut down. We're shut for 2 weeks, but I suspect it'll be longer than that.
Yeah, but because of the facility, it's the same with my husband's club. They shut down too, but the facility is closed. This is the reason why.
Yeah, I think
it looks like everybody's here, and we should probably go ahead and get on with the meeting and talk about this a little while later. So I'd just like to go ahead and let Dave Bobanick from Harvest Against Hunger go ahead and take the meeting over, and welcome.
Great. Hello, everybody. Thanks very much for asking me to be here. I was keeping myself muted as we were talking about the coronavirus, but I'm based in Seattle. I'm the only one here in our office today, and I bike in, and so it's a ghost town out there. One of the challenges that we're seeing is planning out how we're going to continue to provide hunger relief services, especially to the vulnerable communities that really rely on food banks, meal programs. We're working on a couple of different statewide task forces, and I actually went and volunteered at a food bank this morning on my way into work. One, because they need volunteers. So if you can volunteer at your local food bank, please try to do so. But 2, just to see the social distancing. How are they making that social distancing protocol work in an environment where you're trying to have volunteers providing services to clients? And I was really impressed to see a lot of thought went into it, and it was very, very safe for everybody that was there. So anyway, I'm delighted to talk about Harvest Against Hunger, a little bit of my background. I'm a member of the Rotary Club of Mercer Island, past president, and also serve currently as a Rotary Public Image Coordinator for Zone 26, which is, along with Zone 25, basically the entire western United States, all the way from Arizona up to Canadian border and a little bit of Canada, and then across to all into parts of Texas. So been working here at this program for 18 years now. And so we've really, over the course of those 18 years, we've evolved as an organization, but our work really remains the same. And it's an organization that we'll get into a little bit more what it means to be a Rotary District project here, or program. But suffice it to say that everybody that's involved with the organization is a Rotarian. So staff members are all Rotarians, although there are only 4 of us. So that's, not as impressive as it could be. But also our board of directors it's all Rotarians at this point. We've got about 18 folks on our board of directors, and traditionally they represent all sorts of different clubs around the greater Seattle area. So large scale clubs like a Seattle 4 to very small clubs like a Covington Rotary. Our board president is currently there. and they have, I think, 22 members. So that's the organization, and I'm delighted to have a chance to talk a little bit about the work that we do. So let me just, there we go. This really, in a nutshell, is what we believe. It's really our core value, and it is that providing healthy food to people in need builds healthier communities. And we really want to focus on healthy food. Forever since we started as an organization, we have been distributing produce, so fruits and vegetables, into the hunger relief system. And that's something that really is different about us and what a lot of other organizations will do. So we aren't going to go and try to find canned goods or boxed goods or other things. Our community partners will do that. But our role is really to find ways that we can get healthy produce into the hunger relief system. So we always talk about kind of why, we want to do a level set of why we do this work. And I'm going to talk about Washington State specifically here for a moment, but we're also doing programs in other parts of the country. In Washington State last year, 1.15 million people received assistance from hunger relief organizations. And that is, the fact that many of those services went to children and seniors. So about 43% of the services went to children, and an additional 20 to 21% went to seniors. And so, more than half are going to pretty vulnerable groups in our society, children living in poverty, as well as seniors living in poverty. And oftentimes, in a place like Seattle, senior living on a fixed income, it's challenging. The cost of living here is quite high, and it just continues to get higher. But for kids that are relying on hunger relief organizations, or whose families are relying on hunger relief organizations to make ends meet, it's really critical to us that they have access to really healthy produce. It's going to allow their brains to develop, allow their bodies to grow, and allow them, or at least give them the chance to get over those hurdles that they face on a daily basis. If you've got better nutrition, you can pay attention in school. Social skills, you can develop social skills better. Just the idea of having those fruits and vegetables and having some product with nutrient density in your diet is really going to help you as a child to progress through life. So at the same time, we have that tremendous need at hunger relief organizations. And again, not just here in Washington, but all across our country. 40% of the food that we grow in the United States, at least, goes to waste. And that number is everything from, this is a USDA number, U.S. Department of Agriculture, that it encompasses everything from what's grown in the field, like these apples at this orchard, all the way through the consumer model that we've got that scary drawer in our refrigerator that, has brown stuff in it that we don't know who bought it and when they bought it, but it's, gone bad. So that goes into the food waste continuum as well. These apples that you see, and I think you can probably see the screen pretty well, but I'm going to just, sorry to do this, use my pointer. But you see this apple back here, it's got these little spots on it. It looks, it has the same nutrient density as this beautiful, perfect apple up here, but there was a calcium deficiency in the trees in this orchard. And so it was going to cost the orchardist more to get those apples picked off of her trees than she was going to be able to sell them for. So, that's just one vignette, one fairly tiny, small vignette of how, this beautiful, healthy product could potentially go to waste, in terms of what we do when we buy food at the grocery store. We expect every Granny Smith apple to be the right size and that same green color. We expect, these are cameo apples, so we expect every one of those to have nice striping and everything else, but that's not the way fruit and vegetables grow in nature. We've got funny looking carrots, we've got apples that are just the wrong size or might have a little bit of spotting or even have sunburn on them. I'm going to show you slides a little bit later that have pears with some weird sunburn on them, that, you know, our brains we've been developed as consumers to say, if it doesn't look right, it's probably not healthy, or I'm not going to eat that because it's inferior. And that's not the case. It's still just as nutritious as you know, the ugly fruit is just as nutritious as a perfect fruit. So, you know, we've got a high level of need and a high level of food waste. And so into that mix steps an organization and the work that we do. And so we started out, and I always take a moment when I'm talking to Rotary groups about this, like any Rotary project anywhere in the world, we started out with one Rotarian who had an idea to make the world a better place. And then he brought it back to his club and really worked with and collaborated with folks in his club to build a program that continues to work to this day. So our one Rotarian was a banker who had nothing to do with food, nothing to do with hunger, you know, with trucking companies or anything else. But he was a banker, and he was Norm Hillis, and he was a member of the University District Rotary Club here in Seattle. And he and his wife were dropping off some food at a local church, because at the time in 1982, a lot of hunger relief activities were done, you know, out of church basements, sort of, you know, this organic growth of, we know there's need in the community. Who can help hungry people in our community? Well, a lot of them come to the churches and ask for help. So a lot of food banks at the time, and then in the early 80s, really started out in that religious church-based community. So one of the things that Norm noticed when he was at the food bank was that there was no fruit or vegetables there. It was all canned, it was all processed, it was all boxed. And so he decided that he really wanted to find a way to get healthier food into that local food bank, in the church basement. And so he went back to his club and came up with this idea that was based on the old Victory Garden model from World Wars I and II, which is you plant an extra row in your garden and you collect it, and it then goes to the greater good. And so they started out this Victory Garden model in the University District, and they partnered with I think at the time, it was their Bell Telephone store to distribute seed packets to backyard gardeners. And people would grow produce, and then Rotarians would set up collection points, and then they'd take it to the fire station, where it would be distributed out to local church-based food banks. And so, you know, the first year they had a bumper crop, so we're in Seattle, and I know that there are bumper crops that are varied all around the country, but here in Seattle, if you've got a bumper crop of anything, it's zucchini, right? So in Seattle, you don't even have to plant zucchini in order to have a bumper crop of zucchini. So that first year, they had a lot of zucchini and other produce items that they got into the food banks. So in 1983, the very next year, they had a member who's this guy over here. His name is Mike Shanahan, who was the chief of police at the University of Washington. And Mike decided as a member of the club that he was going to do what I think really is the magic of Rotary. And that is, we all have these networks. You know, everybody on this call has his or her own unique networks that we can use and that we can marshal to do things and to affect change, if we choose to do that. So Mike's network was law enforcement all across Washington state. So what Mike did, which is breaking the rules, is he sent out an APB to all law enforcement across Washington state and said, I'm working with Rotarians in my club, and we've got a project that we're trying to get more produce into the hunger relief system. If you've got any extra produce in your community or know of any, let me know. We'd love to help. And so, of course, 2 days later, he got a call from the sheriff in Othello, Washington. And Othello's in a different part of Washington state. It's in eastern Washington, very rural, very flat, but it's a real agricultural basin for us. But the farmer, or the sheriff said, hey, I've got a farmer down the road. I was just talking to him this morning over coffee. He said he has 30,000 pounds of onions and that you can come and get them anytime. It's like, oh, okay. Now, now what do? 30,000 pounds of onions is basically a truckload of onions. So again, using that Rotary model, Mike picked up the phone and started calling his fellow members of the Rotary Club. And they found through one of the members a connection to a company called Lakeside Industries. It's a construction company that does road construction all across the Northwest. They happen to have a gravel truck, a dump truck, coming back empty from a job in Eastern Washington. They said, sure, we can send the dump truck over. And they got it loaded with onions. And the truck brought it back to Seattle. And then they dumped like this. This is a load of potatoes, but they dumped it out, and Rotarians got scout troops and other folks in the community involved to repack it, repurpose it, and get it to the hunger relief system. So I spend some time talking about this, talking about the early days of the organization, because it really is still part of the DNA, part of the work that we do here every day. We call it our core work because we've branched out and we do a number of other things, but this core work is really central to what we do and what we are and the service that we provide to hunger relief organizations all around, not just Washington State, but the Northwest. So from those early days of Norm going to his club and saying, hey, I've got an idea, let's get some produce into the hunger relief system, we've brought in 230 million pounds of healthy excess produce that otherwise would have gone to waste. So 230,000 pounds, how do you get your head around that? Most of us know what a pound looks like. But we say it's, almost 500 million servings. And if you think of a serving as an apple, or in this case, a pear, that's 500 million healthy servings of produce that we've been able to provide to people that are coming into the hunger relief system. So I'm going to take a real quick moment here and just, I don't want to talk at you. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and interrupt me, because once I start going, I'll just keep going.
That's awesome that you can do that. I always have a hard time presenting. I say this every time, presenting to the group when they're completely silent. It's so unsettling sometimes. I know in California, they've had some issues where like the grocery stores can't donate their fruits to homeless shelters and to food banks because of the legislation that's in place. Do you run into the same issue, and have you had success in combating that type of legislation in Washington?
Yeah, so we actually work with a couple of organizations down in California. There's California Emergency Food Link, there's Food Forward that's based in LA. And yeah, I think that, sometimes legislation, the idea that legislation can protect consumers is what drives some of those decisions that are made. But it tends to be fairly short-sighted. And so what I think they're starting to do now is to build in some workarounds that will allow those hunger relief programs. We haven't run into that here in our state, but one of the things that we really rely on, because we work directly with growers and packing houses, is Good Samaritan law. So the Bill Emerson Good Samaritan law that provides protection if you're donating food, or if you're donating food, yeah, where it protects the donor except in cases of negligence. If product is bad or it's tainted and yet you still donate it, then you're open to a lawsuit. But that Good Samaritan Act tends to protect people. And so we're constantly talking with our legislators about finding ways to make it easier for organizations, companies, even backyard gardeners to donate produce, as opposed to coming up with these restrictive policies that are going to get in the way of doing that. So again, I mentioned that it's a part of the DNA of our organization. But really from those early days, what we've done is we just find ways to connect and collaborate. Again, you think about this, you run it through that Rotary filter in all of our brains, and that's the way all of our Rotary projects are, right? It's, for the most part, Rotary is really good at connecting and collaborating and finding ways to get into a space between organizations to help make good things happen. And so that's exactly the way that we do it. And we really, like I said, we have a staff of 4, and we're moving 10 million pounds of produce a year. So we can't do that without connecting and collaborating. And we don't have trucks, and we don't have forklifts, and we don't have warehouses. And so I'm going to walk you through some of the groups, the partners that we work with, and I'll introduce you to some of these characters. So I was actually on the phone texting 2 of these people as we were getting ready for the meeting today, because this is happening tomorrow morning as of about 15 minutes ago. This is Jack. Jack Wallace is in Burlington, Washington, and he's a potato farmer. And what Jack does is he goes into the field and pulls all the potatoes out of the field. So they're not going into the field and sorting. There are good potatoes here. There are funny shaped potatoes here. There are potatoes with a little bit of thin skin or color is off or something like that. They all come out of the field, and then Jack takes them back, well, Jack's staff takes them back to the packing facility, and they've got 3 lines set up. And on the first line, that's the grade A perfect potatoes that you see sold in the grocery stores. Line B is the ones that aren't perfect, but can still be put into bags and sold. And then the third line is our line. And that's this, you know, the potatoes that came out of the same field have the same nutrient density. They just don't have the visual appeal that the first 2 lines do. And so Jack will basically run those potatoes for us, washes them, cleans them, boxes them, gets them ready to go. And then he sends us an email when he's got a 40,000 pound truckload of potatoes ready to go. So now we've got a 40,000 pound truckload of potatoes in Burlington, Washington. Well, that's great, but that's not going to do anybody good until we can get them to a distribution center. So I just got a text from this guy. I checked my phone. This is Ed Taylor. He's the guy in the Carhartt sweatshirt, by the way. He's the guy that looks like a trucker. Ed runs Taylor driving schools, and he's out teaching people how to get their CDL and getting their CDL licenses. So he's teaching people how to drive trucks. Ed would typically have the classes out on the road running empty, or maybe they're full of water or concrete barriers or something like that. But what Ed will do is he'll actually use the donations that we get as a training tool for his students. Because what they'll do is they'll learn, how do you deal with a manifest? How do you deal with a commercial dock and pulling into a dock? And then what's the paperwork look like? And all of these other things that are real life instances. So they're not just coming out with a CDL license, but they have some real knowledge about how to be effective truck drivers. And it's been a wonderful partnership. So at 6:30 tomorrow morning, Ed's truck is going to go over with 5 students, and they're going to pull into Jack's place. And it's probably going to take them like 5 times to get it backed in straight, but they're going to get it. And then they're going to get loaded with those potatoes. And then they're going to drive it down here to the Seattle area, and they're going to deliver it to Lonnie. And Lonnie works at one of the food bank warehouses that we work with. In this case, it's Northwest Harvest. And then they have these resources where they can distribute out to about 400 hunger relief organizations around the state. So meal programs, food banks, and other things. So the potatoes, and it's 40,000 pounds of purple potatoes that we're picking up tomorrow. So those potatoes are going to go down to the Northwest Harvest warehouse, and they're going to get distributed out to the hunger relief system. So again, it's finding ways to make those connections. Now, we don't typically touch the food, but what we will do is we'll set up work parties. So once a month at the Northwest Harvest warehouse and once a month at another food bank warehouse, we will get about 100 Rotarians together from around the district, and we'll help to repack the product that we get in. This was a work party, and it looks like we did 30,000 pounds of cucumbers that day. But there are, a number of things that we'll bring in. So we'll bring in bins of all sorts of different things, repack it, get it ready to go. So that's the one time that we truly have an opportunity to actually touch the product, and it's hands-on. And it's about a 2-hour work party, but let me go back to this slide. Look at the variance of age and everything else with this group of people. So it's interactors, it's Rotaractors, it's Rotarians, and also we had, I think, 5 people who were potential new members that were participating in the work party. So it was a nice way to show very tangibly what Rotary is doing in the community to help things. So again, I mean, those are a couple of pears that I found, and they were these beautiful star crimson pears, but they just had this weird coloration that made them not saleable. So we talk about pears, apples, onions, carrots, lots of other things that we'll bring in that are a little more shelf stable. And we tend to work with large scale packing houses, so 40,000 pounds. So that model that I just went through works really well for those donations. But what happens when we've got ultra fresh product and it's available from small scale growers? So for example, this is Adam, and he worked with a farm not too far away from here, but it was only like I think it's a 30-acre farm, maybe a 50-acre farm. So he's never going to provide 40,000 pound truckload of produce. He'll have maybe a couple hundred pounds at a time that'll be available. Now, Adam represents, there are about 30,000, literally 30,000 growers across Washington state. So we can't have relationships with all of them, but they all want to have some way to donate to their local hunger relief organization. So we created a program called our Harvest VISTA program. And what it does is it takes AmeriCorps VISTA, and I'm sure many of you are familiar with AmeriCorps. You may not be as familiar with VISTA. It's actually started out as a sister program to Peace Corps back in the 60s. I think it was 64. And so it's volunteers in service to America. And it's typically recent college graduates who are wanting to spend basically a year in service in communities all across the country. So our VISTA, our Harvest VISTA, these are, you know, they're from all around the country doing work, help us to develop programs that are specific to a community. So instead of saying, here's the Rotary First Harvest program, or excuse me, here's the Harvest Against Hunger program, take it and make it work in your community. It's, hey, hunger relief organization, or cooperative extension organization, or whatever the other community organization might be. You know your community the best. Let's give you this resource, a Harvest VISTA resource, and you're going to work with them to build a program model that suits your community's needs and attributes. And so it's a different way, it's a different approach of developing a program. And like Lisa developed a program in Carnation, Washington. This is Ben, who actually helped to run the program. He graduated out of the Harvest VISTA program and ran the program. He was our program director before going off and getting his MBA at Vanderbilt. And this is Tracy, and she was developing a program in Yakima, Washington. The thing about this program, in addition to developing these programs that are then sustainable in communities all across Washington, and we've been doing programs in 13 other states. This is also this wonderful leadership development tool. So, you know, these young men and women are just out of college, and it's, you know, not necessarily an easy thing for your first job to be given the responsibility of being a program development director, to go into a community, look at what the needs and attributes are, and build a program based on that. So it's this really wonderful leadership development model that we've been doing this for 10 years, and it probably in about our third or fourth year of doing it, it's like, oh, this is, you know, these are young men and women who now are leading nonprofit organizations in their communities. Some of them are city council members. You know, it's just been this incubator of really good ideas and really great service-minded people that are continuing to be involved in their communities. This is in Walla Walla. So quick pause. Does anybody have any questions on that Harvest VISTA program? Okay, no questions. So with the Harvest VISTA program, one of the years that we did it, we actually went out and did a series of grower roundtables. And it was, again, learning from small scale growers what their needs were. And we did it in 6 different communities around Washington state. And, you know, just sat and talked with growers. We kind of did this with a moderator. It was a really beautifully designed program by the VISTA. And what we learned at those grower roundtables was that for many farmers, especially the smaller scale farmers that are, you know, just wonderful people who really want to be involved in their community, we found that they oftentimes were feeling like, or literally had to use the local food bank themselves, because it's really tough to be a small scale grower and to make ends meet. And so what they told us was that even a little bit of money at a certain time of the season can make or break their business. And so if you think about a small scale grower, they put in a huge outlay of cash as they're getting the crop into the ground at the beginning of the year. And then there's this long period before they start to see that money coming back to them. And so it's a really uncomfortable time, and it's a skinny time of the year for them when the crop is in the ground, but they don't have anything to sell yet. And so what we developed was a program called Farm to Food Pantry. And it was a program that we piloted about 6 years ago with our Department of Agriculture. And it actually creates contracts of even like $500 to $1,000 that is a contract purchase to small scale growers, so that they're growing food specifically for local hunger relief organizations. So we started out with 3 different sites around the state, and now we're in 16 different counties. We're not quite in each county, or no, I'm sorry, we're in 24 different counties across Washington state. Not quite each county, but we've developed this program over the years. And so the WSDA, the Department of Agriculture, gives us a pot of money, and then we divvy that up with organizations around the state, and then they develop contractual relationships with small scale growers in their communities. And what's happened is, for every pound of food that's purchased, 4 more pounds are getting donated. So those growers, it goes from being a one-way relationship where the farmers want to donate, but oftentimes they just don't have the means to do so, to a 2-way relationship where the farmer's selling and they've got a relationship. It's this evolutionary process that takes place over the course of a couple of years. And so it's like Chandler is with Hayshaker Farms out in Walla Walla, Washington. And, you know, just a scion in his community, and really happy to participate in the Farm to Food Pantry initiative. But Chandler is one of those examples of a grower who gets a little bit of funding at the beginning of the year and then just donates crops throughout the rest of the year. It's just been a wonderful relationship to have. These folks are out on the Olympic Peninsula. It's a husband and wife. They run a small scale farm, and they decided to wear matching colors with the sign that day. And another one, this is again out on the Olympic Peninsula, a small scale grower with Red Dog Farms. But you know, these are all the folks that are really thrilled to be involved and you know, engaged in their community with it. So this past year we had, I think, 86 farms around the country, or around the state, participating in the program. 163 food pantries received produce from it. 22 counties were served. And then over 300,000 pounds was either gleaned or purchased through the program. And just a really quick hold for a second. One of the things that we found is that the nutrient density of the crops that are coming in from Farm to Food Pantry is much, much higher than typically what is donated to hunger relief organizations. And in fact, some of the programs are overlaying their decisions of what to purchase from the growers with a nutrient density model that we built with the University of Washington, and client preferences and what the growers want to grow. So in some communities, they're purchasing things like broccoli because they know that's what their clients want. That's a high nutrient density product. And then it's also something that they can grow. In other communities, maybe they're doing something like greens or bok choy or something like that, because again, they're trying to serve the clients. But it's always the idea of building in some nutrient density that they would not otherwise have available at their hunger relief organizations. King County Farmers Share, and we're wrapping up here pretty quickly, but King County Farmers Share is a sister program to the Farm to Food Pantry, and that takes place right here in King County. Seattle is based in King County, so basically Rotary District 5030 it encompasses King County, and it's a sister program. We just developed it last year, and so folks like Tommy here who would typically, it's really challenging for Tommy. I'm standing in the field talking to him as I take this picture. And he's telling me, put the damn camera down and get to work. But this field of kale behind him was needing to be disked over, and he needed to plant something else. So Tommy's engaged in the program because he's doing some contract purchasing, but that entire field of kale, we had a group of gleaners from a partner organization come out that Tommy wanted to just give away and glean so that it wouldn't go to waste, because Tommy's worked all season to grow that crop, and it's a beautiful crop. And the last thing he wants to see happen is for it to go to waste. It kills farmers to see any of their product go to waste. So anyway, that's King County Farmer Share. This is an example of one of the sites that we worked with. So as we're bringing all of this produce into the hunger relief system, we also realize that especially at the far end of that hunger distribution network, you've got large warehouses and they go to smaller warehouses, and then it gets out to these rural programs that are open a couple of times a week and providing service. Oftentimes, a couple of volunteers that are just, focused on getting product out. So if you're bringing perishable product into them, it can create some challenges, some unintended consequences. So we developed, in partnership with a funder here in the Seattle area, a refrigerated capacity grant model that is basically a rebate program where we're giving cash to organizations that want to go out in their local community, because again, we want them to support their local community, and purchasing refrigerators, whatever the refrigerator type is. It could be a reach-in, could be a stand-up, it could be a regular refrigerator in a really small area, but giving them cash rebates so that they can go out and buy refrigerated capacity that meets that organization's needs and attributes. So those refrigerated capacity grants then allow them to get this sort of beautiful product in from local sources, or this came in from one of the farm to food pantry programs, and safely handle it and effectively get it out to hunger relief organizations. So again, that's a whole lot of talking, but bringing it all back to why do we do this work in the first place? And the reason that we do is because every day, this morning at the food bank that I was volunteering at, there are people who come in at a time of crisis in their lives, and they just need a little bit of help making ends meet. And the fact that, if you're a parent and you have to get some help to feed your child, getting really healthy, nutritious produce for them is really important. And so, we're going to continue to evolve as an organization and find ways that we can support efforts to get healthy food into the hands of people who are going through a crisis, and through our various partner organizations. So that's the work of Harvest Against Hunger. That's why we do what we do. And I saw on the chat field, I didn't stop and look, but it looked like that there were maybe some questions that people were asking. So I'd love to stop here and answer any questions you may have. But first, thank you all so much for allowing me to come and talk about the organization.
Hey, thanks, David.
No, go ahead.
Oh, this is Linda. Did you guys get any food when from the farms at Pleasant Valley Farms in 2012 when they went bankrupt?
From Pleasant Valley Farms.
Yeah, there were like fields of cabbage and stuff that just went to massive waste.
Where were they?
They're in Mount Vernon up on Pleasant Ridge. So kind of, they look out over LaConner, basically.
That would have been 2012?
Yeah.
So we were getting, did they grow cauliflower, broccoli?
A
couple of those items?
I don't think they grew broccoli. They made pickles and sauerkraut and something else.
Honestly, off the top of my head, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I would think, like, I know we've got a couple of really strong partners up there. We were talking a little bit earlier, Skagit Community Distribution Center is one of them. So that's actually being run by, the director of that is one of our former VISTA. And I know that he's made a concerted effort over the past 5 years to really reach out with all of the growers that are in that community. So
Yeah, they
I
don't.
don't know off the top of my head, but if it were to happen now, I know that we've got a really great system in place to capture that product.
Yeah, they don't exist anymore. They literally went away.
Yeah.
So David, how do you guys quantify nutrient density?
So there, how deep do you want me to go on this? It's there. So there's a gentleman at the University of Washington named Adam Dronovsky, who is a nutritionist and teaches nutrition. He created a nutrient density scoring system, and it's hundreds of different different crops, and each of those, it's based on a combined score that takes in vitamins, that takes in carbohydrates, that takes in all sorts of different attributes of a food, and then gives it a nutrient density score. And then what we do, we've created this conversion tool that our programs can use, so that instead of it being in grams, it's in pounds, so that you know what the nutrient density score of a pound of broccoli is, for example. And then you can assign a score to that. And again, it's based on proper nutrition research. You can assign a score to that. And so what we're starting to do is change a conversation from just pounds of food to kind of the value of the food. Because if you think about, like I showed you this thing of greens here, let me pull that back up. If you look at that, that doesn't weigh very much, but the nutrient density value of that's pretty high because of the phytogens and other things. And so, to say this versus 2 pounds of, like a case of soda is going to weigh quite a bit more, but the nutrient density and the value of providing this to the hunger relief system is going to be so much higher. So we're working, we're really trying to change the conversation, especially with funding organizations, around the way that we quantify the work that we're doing. And again, looking at ways that we can get some of this highly nutrient dense food into the hunger relief system, as opposed to stuff that just weighs a lot.
Okay. And then also another question, while you got this beautiful bag of produce up, earlier you were talking about Good Samaritan laws and contamination. Do you guys have point of care, like testing kits for salmonella and things like that, so that you can kind of keep sort of a check on your, because it looks like you're packing things, and how does that work?
Sure. So the farms, most of the farms, so a couple of things about that. One is, when it is a smaller scale organic farm, they tend to be a great deal cleaner. When it comes to some of the crops that are being grown, you're not going to have listeria and some of those other things, or you're less likely to have listeria and some of those other things that you would have from some of the larger commercial operations. But each of the farms that we're working with is certified. So certified for best practices. So there are rules in California around that. There are rules in Washington State that supersede some of the federal rules. But since we're partnering with WSDA, Washington State Department of Agriculture, the farms that we're working with are all certified farms. And so they're following appropriate practices.
Okay.
We don't have testing kits at each of the Hunger Relief Organization locations. And I'm not really sure that they have the capacity, especially those ones that are smaller with volunteers. They don't necessarily have the capacity to do a lot of testing that could potentially be required. But one thing I will say is that we're very careful. So we work primarily with produce. When it comes to things like milk or eggs or meat, those things all have to be run through commercial processors, commercial processors and packers, as opposed to, other ways that could come into the system. So food banks and food pantries really are very careful about the product that they're putting out, because they know people coming into hunger relief organizations are typically a little bit more vulnerable, may have some health issues that are going to make them more susceptible to food poisoning or other things.
Right. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, you bet.
I'm being super nosy on your website and I'm looking at
Cool.
your financials.
Okay.
And I was curious, what is the breakout of what you're receiving from Rotary specific program grants, project grants, and outside grants?
So we get most of the fundraising that we will do from individuals is individual Rotarians. We don't really go outside of Rotary to raise money from individuals, and then Rotary Club donations. So we are probably at about 34% comes from Rotary clubs and individual Rotarians. And then the rest of it comes from, we have a major event every year. We just got that finished at the end of last month. That brings in a significant amount of our revenue. And then corporations and foundations are the balance that we get. So grants from corporations and foundations.
I mean, looking at that top number, that top level revenue number, that's impressive. That amount of fundraising is something we should all be asking you how you got there.
Well, so which page are you looking at? Because I'm not, are you looking at the?
I'm looking at the 990s that are in here.
Okay, all right. So that top level number includes the value of the donated food and the value of the donated trucking. So
That was my next question.
Our actual budget, yeah. So our actual budget's significantly smaller than that. And like one way to look at it is for probably every dollar we get about 30 pounds of produce into the system.
Cool. Okay. Yeah, for everybody else that isn't looking at my screen, that they're running at about 10 million, which is impressive. And that was one of the things I was going to ask is, you know, how are you accounting for the value of the trucking and the produce that's coming in? That's still impressive. I mean, it's a massive undertaking, something this size to be able to run. I mean, according to this, you got 1,000 volunteers. Like, we have a hard time getting a couple people sometimes. So anything we can do to mimic what you guys are doing, I want to do it.
Well, and you know, as a matter of fact, that number of volunteers, when we have 100 volunteers, 115, 120 volunteers at our work parties, that adds up pretty quickly. And it's not just, so there are regulars, I'd say probably 20%, maybe quarter, maybe a little bit less, are regulars who come multiple times. But a lot of people that come are first-time volunteers, and that's really their entree into Rotary.
Do you have much conversion of people who received food through the banks coming in to help and be volunteers at future events?
We don't, but a lot of the hunger relief programs that we work with do. So we don't, you know, we don't have a place for people to come and volunteer. I'm standing in my office here. But when we go to partner warehouse, that's where we have all the Rotary volunteers come in. But I know a number of the food bank programs that we work with, a lot of the gleaning organizations that we work with, will have clients that will volunteer with them. And I know it's been that way for many years. So it's interesting. I mean, some of the programs that we work with don't want their clients to volunteer for various reasons, and others are really eager to have clients volunteer. And so what we try to do is just respect what that food bank or food pantry program wants to do.
I gotta say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I have another question. How long it take when you get this potatoes, per example, in? How long it take get it from the farm over the storage or whatever to the people? How many days? How many hours?
Oh,
how long it takes?
So let's see. That should be fine. Okay, so those potatoes, like got a text here, are going to get picked up tomorrow morning at 6:45. And they're going to be delivered to the warehouse, and they're by 10 probably. And they're going to be going out to hunger relief organizations by noon. And so, you know, probably within the same day, somebody's going to be getting some.
Wow. Yeah.
But oftentimes it could be a little bit later. Now with what we're doing with the Harvest VISTA program, That could be morning pick and afternoon distribution. I mean, we see that a lot just because of the nature of the product that they're bringing in.
Wow, impressive, very impressive.
Yeah, and again, I mean, we realized we tried to have a model that was I'm showing you what we've been successful at, but we had a model where we tried being the central processing facility for connecting local farmers with food banks. And what we realized is those relationships need to be localized in order for them to be successful. And so a lot of you were asking about the amount of product that we've brought in. None of the food that comes in through our Harvest VISTA program shows up in our books because it's all remote. It all happens at those local programs. And so we don't show the however many hundreds of thousands or millions of pounds that come in through the Harvest VISTA program, especially not after those programs have been established and are on their own. One of the things I should have mentioned about that Harvest VISTA program is it's a 3-year cycle. So you have 3 individual VISTA members. First year is kind of the entrepreneur who puts the program together. The second year is typically the data person or the kind of nerdy person who helps to build that program model out. And then the 3rd year person is the one who puts it on a path to sustainability. So they're looking for funding, they're looking for other ways to do it, so that when we pull that VISTA resource out, that program continues to operate. But again, we don't see any of that product in our books.
How can a Rotary Club like us help you?
So you're in Texas?
No, I'm talking from our Rotary Club.
Oh,
you just talked.
Rotary Club. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Well, so one of the things we always say when we're talking to anybody is to find your local hunger relief organization and find whatever the weakest link in their chain is for their service and use Rotary resources to make it the strongest. You know, I think what I'd like to do is to be able to share information with you. If you'd like, you have information on our website, but also, you know, we stay within the Rotary community to raise funds to do this work. And so, you know, if there's, that would probably be the most expedient way to support us is
So
through,
David, we're an e-club, but we're all over the States, Canada. We've got a member in Mexico City and one in Guatemala. We have a gentleman joining us tonight who is a guest. Did he fall off? Who's down in Jamaica as well, right? So we have quite a bit of reach. We just don't have a local community that we can all rally around, right? So if there's something that we can do from an information campaign push or something like that, we'd be more than happy to do so. I think that would be where we would be able to help the most.
Great. So yeah, so that's our website, and I'm just David at harvestagainsthunger.org if you want to contact me directly.
I think just sharing the information between all of our Rotary clubs is an absolute benefit.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things that's been really gratifying for us is that we have seen and have helped Rotarians to develop local programs in their own communities. So we've worked with Global Food Banking Network to engage Rotarians in countries all around the world where they're replicating some of the work that we're doing.
Great. I think it's really great, you know.
Yeah, and like I said, please, oh my goodness. I see Bemidji. I just opened up the chat box and I see that there's a person from Bemidji, and one of our staff is from that area. So
where is it?
It's in Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
So I will let her know that somebody from Bemidji heard the presentation.
Butch is actually, he's a guest tonight. He was reminding me that we have other guests than the guy from Jamaica who fell off.
Oh, great.
I told Butch he's been here a couple times, so he's already been adopted.
Yeah. Okay, well, so does anybody have any other questions about this? Like, believe me, we could be here till 9 o'clock if you let me.
Well, I didn't have a question, but I did have a comment, and that is what I consider to be how brilliant it was to involve a truck driving school. I drove truck for a little while. In fact, picked up produce in Washington State a couple of times. And I'm just thinking that is just pure brilliance of involving student drivers.
Yeah, so, you know, the funny thing about Ed is that he claims that he's using us as much as we're using him, because it's that real world training. And the other thing, when we go up and like, I'll go and visit him from time to time, and you know, it's really nice to talk to the students because the students feel really proud of what they're doing. They really like that they're doing something beneficial for the community, and then they'll take that forward to wherever they're going to work next. So not only do we work with a driver training school, that was just the one example, and it happened to be the way we're working this today, or for tomorrow's load, but we work with a number of different commercial trucking organizations that have I mean, if you're a former trucker, you know there are backhaul lanes that are open. You're deadheading. It's just the nature of it. Like you can plan. Truckers are really good at, or trucking companies are really good at trying to plan. They don't want to run dead air, but it happens from time to time. And so it's just a matter of you know, finding those connections. And if one trucking company can't help you today, they may be able to help you in 3 days. But another trucking company can help you today. It's just the nature of the business. And I think we work with, like, we'll even work with trucking companies to haul loads of product that don't originate with us. So it was this week. It was Monday. We just engaged one of our trucking partners to go and pick up a load of onions that another organization had donated to it that they needed to get to their warehouse. And so it's just, you know, finding ways to connect people so that ultimately the whole end goal of this is to make sure that when we've got people coming into hunger relief organizations, they get some food that's healthy.
David, John Annie from Delaware, great presentation, and it's awesome work you do, and I'm always impressed in what one Rotarian's idea can, you know, connect the world. Thank you very much for a great presentation.
You're more than welcome. And, you know, one of the things we always say is that we're just, you know, we're building on something that a bunch of really forward-thinking Rotarians started and developed.
All right. Well, are there any other questions before we? I want to ask for a volunteer tonight to give our four-way test, because I haven't cornered anybody. So if anybody has any other questions, ask them now. And I'm looking for a volunteer.
Ryan, can I have a couple minutes after everybody's questions are done?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Can we close the meeting first? Is it just us, or do you want it for everybody?
It's kind of for everybody. It's something I want to kind of put in everybody's heads before next week.
Okay.
So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. There, you guys can now.
Thank you, David.
You're
now
welcome.
we can see each other even better. You guys better get cuter.
Yes. Yeah. Now you can see the whole group.
Okay, Amanda, it's all you.
All right, guys. So everything I was planning this year has been canceled. So as Jerry said, we've had to cancel the trip to Guatemala. We just put in the chat that it looks like the international convention is canceled as well. So I've been trying to noodle through some ways that we might be able to help in a more local way. So as part of District 6380, you guys know that we're Michigan and Canada. Sorry, David. Michigan and Ontario mostly. With everybody potentially going to virtual classroom, I think next week I'd like to kind of stub out a plan for whether we can provide online tutoring using our existing Zoom capabilities. I'm looking around the room. We've got a doctor, we've got a law enforcement specialist, we've got someone who speaks fluent German, Spanish. We got a lot of smarts in the room. So I put together kind of an outline of what we might be able to do. And then if guys, throughout the week, if you want to shoot me some emails or social media with me or whatever you want to do, I would love to hear your ideas on what you might be able to provide. It's still kind of an idea in infancy, you know, because as of right now, we don't know if they're even going to continue education or if they're just going to go have a great summer in your bedrooms. But you know, that's where we are. So I thought that maybe we could start thinking about something we could do where we could provide something a little bit more localized to 6380, because I think we're not going to be able to open it up to the entire communities that we service, which are the entire United States and Canada, right? So maybe we just provide it in 6380 and see what happens. So if between now and next week, next Wednesday, you guys have a chance to put some thought into it, I would appreciate your input. If not, I will stub something together and present it, and then you can poke holes in it next week.
One thing that we might want to think about, if you want to approach the board about, is offering our Zoom account to other clubs in 6380 so they get a chance to try it out.
Also something we can think about. You know, it was funny, not to bogart the entire meeting here, but for the 32 hours I was at Pets last week before it got canceled, Holger Kanak, who is the president-elect for Rotary International, actually was there and spoke. And someone asked about whether they were planning to cancel the convention. He said he was still thinking about it. Apparently he's made a decision. But I stood up during the Rotary 101 when he was talking. I was like, hey, you know, we're kind of experts in this online, you know, presenting virtually thing. And he looked at me and said, he didn't actually say, but he went, oh, that's cute. My wife founded one of the first clubs, the CDE club in Germany. So anyway, so it's just something that, you know, I made it a point at every possible moment. They're probably sick of hearing how we're at a club and how cool we are. But you know, that's definitely something we can probably do. And it's funny, I actually brought it up at work this morning because our company doesn't work virtually until this week, and especially tomorrow with the memorandum that came out of the president's office for further telework. But I brought it up to the CEO of my company today. She's like, I've never managed a team. I don't even know how to run a meeting in a virtual. I was like, I got you. So anyway, so just between now and next week, if you guys have any thoughts on how we might be able to provide some online tutoring, some virtual tutorings, because face-to-face is a little bit more palatable, especially for kids when they can see reactions and get facial expressions. So things that we can do, I would appreciate it.
All right.
It's good.
Well, I'm certainly open to doing some science tutoring. So that's wonderful. It's not like I've got a lot to do except move my house. So.
Hey, did you make a decision?
Well, I'll tell you what, I matched. I know that I matched, but we don't know where until Friday.
Okay.
So we find out first that we did. So I got the email on Monday that I matched. So I am somewhere a family medicine physician. But I don't know where yet. So, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be Reno.
We are looking forward to the Friday email from you that tells all of us where you're going to land.
Absolutely. I call for an ad hoc Zoom happy hour on Friday when you find out.
Okay.
Shoot a note out to everybody. We'll see who calls in.
Brian, when you say you matched, does that mean it's one of the selections that you had picked?
That's correct. It's one of the places that I picked. And I know that it's in my top 3 because my number 4 position is unfilled. The place that I selected for number 4 is unfilled. I have a friend that's there. So I know it's in my top 3, but I don't know where. So, but that's a great idea, Amanda, and I will do that. I'll send out a special meeting.
Yes, yes. This is what I wanted
together.
Yeah, this is what I want to tell you. When everybody want to celebrate with me, you know, log in the meeting place and we can celebrate together. Perfect.
It sounds like
a great
that.
Idea. Yeah.
All right.
You're like experts at social distancing.
Yeah. You know who's experts at social distancing? I went to Costco today, and those guys are doing a tremendously good job. They actually had a line out around the building. They kept everybody at 6 feet. They allowed a certain amount of people in. They had everything. They weren't out of anything. They did a wonderful job. I was really surprised at how good they were doing.
You know, a better way to shop at Costco right now? They ship.
Yeah.
Grocery too.
Good night, Butch.
Hi, Butch. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. So does anybody have the four-way test for me?
Me, I have it.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the four-way test, the things we think, say, or do. Is it the truth? First, is it the truth? Second,
Yep.
is it fair to all
Is it fair to all
concerned?
concerned?
Third, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And fourth, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And the fifth, is it
Will it be
fun? Yes. Thank you, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, guys. See you Friday, hopefully.
Yeah, let's do
Yes.
that. All right.
Yes. Maybe I know more from the ranch as well at Friday. That would be good. So we can talk about that also.
That's true.
Okay.
All right, John, do you want to just give me a call in a little while and I'll set up your meeting for you and you can log in and see what it looks like.
Okay, thanks.
Do you have
Guys.
the Zoom software, John?
Yes.
Okay, that's perfect. All right. Good night, everybody.
Hey, Jerry, your hair's looking a little gray. Hair color.
Are you saying that Debbie's found out what his
product.
Debbie now knows what your real hair color is? That's what she just said.
That is so wrong.
Go to the drugstore and afford some hair color.
I'll tell you,
I'm just getting more distinguished.
the best of all those things out there like that was when somebody posted something about, imagine if there was a diarrhea virus. Everybody would be out there buying nasal spray.
Yeah.
Wait, can I share my screen with you guys and just brag about my dumb dad for a second?
Well, that was really cool.
That picture.
Actually.
So here's the deal. My goofball dad apparently became a meme for this picture right here. Can you? Oh, not that. That is my picture. That's not it. Wait, can you guys actually see the picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I saw this picture.
I know, and everybody's like, I've seen this picture. I've seen this picture. And you got to be kidding me. That's my dad who lives in rural northern Michigan. How did you see that picture? Yeah.
He's viral. He's gone viral. So now there's another one.
It's ridiculous.
I got to tell you, I recognized the face even with the mask.
Did you?
Well, he spent a couple hours right here on my property that one time, you know.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's so funny though, because he sent it to me in a private message last week. And he's like, I don't want to post this anywhere because I don't want to piss anybody off and get the wrath of it, blah, 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 blah. But he sent it to a friend of his who posted it. And all of a sudden, like, I'm not exaggerating. One of the things that one of my friends sent me had 63,000 likes on it. What? This is my dad who tried to be a professional musician and get famous his entire life. And he's going to be famous now for putting a coffee filter on his face. All right. I'm going to get back to trying to figure out if I can employ everybody tomorrow.
John 90, really nice to see you again, pal.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Have a good night, guys.
I'm gonna end this thing.
Thank you.
We'll
Have a
see
good
everybody
one.
later.
Take care.
All right. Good
Hi,
night.
Jamie.
Email John.
John, hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good. It's nice to see you, my friend.
Miss you guys.
We miss you too. Namaste.
Come visit us.
I will. I will.
We need to have a whiskey meeting, Terry.
Yeah,
That'll
whiskey.
solve some of that problem.
I'm missing baseball.
Oh, I know how much you love it.
Yeah.
I miss the hockey.
Yeah.
Well, like I said in my text to you, I have about 3 months worth of bourbon, so I can hunker down for a while.
We have to meter it out.
Have a good one, everyone. Take care. Great seeing you.
Have a good night. Good to see
Bye now.
everybody.